My son promised me that once his deal was done, my property would revert back to me. I trusted him, but after signing that document, something I never thought my own son could do, he did. Before we continue, make sure you subscribe, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments, because you won't believe what happened next. The night Michael came to me, the house was quiet. Too quiet. I had been sitting in my study, surrounded by the smell of old wood and leather, reading the evening paper. That was when I heard the knock. Not the kind of knock you'd expect from your son. The confident, casual sort, but a timid one, almost rehearsed. When I opened the door, there he was, my eldest Michael. He looked tired, his eyes restless but alive with something I mistook for ambition. He had always been different from his siblings. Sharper, hungrier. My late wife, Eva, used to say he had a fire that would either light the way or burn down the house. I used to laugh at that, brushing it off. "Dad," he said softly, his hands clasped like a man with nowhere else to turn. "I need your help." Those words pierced me. A father lives for moments like that, when his son finally comes back, not as a boy, but as a man in need of his wisdom. We sat down at the dining table. He placed a folder in front of me, neat, organized, official-looking. I didn't even bother to check the papers at first. I trusted him. He explained that he was closing a big deal, but the investors needed proof of assets. He asked me to sign over my properties, just temporarily, so it would look like he had backing. "Once the deal is done, Dad, everything reverts back. Just signatures on paper. Nothing changes in reality." His voice was urgent, almost desperate. I looked at him, and in that moment, all I felt was pride. Pride at his boldness, pride at his drive. I remember the first time I saw him, fresh from Eva's womb. His tiny fingers, the way she cried and held him to her chest. I remembered the promise I made to both of them that night. I will protect this boy with my life. And now, here he was, asking me to believe in him. How could I not? So I signed, pen to paper, without hesitation. I even smiled as I did it, thinking to myself, "Eva, you'd be proud of him. He's got your courage." Michael thanked me with a hug that felt off. Too quick, too hollow, not like I was expecting a kiss or anything of that sort. Then he left. That night, I sat by the window, sipping whiskey and feeling a father's joy. My son was finally stepping into greatness. My legacy would live on in him. The next morning, the phone rang. It was my lawyer. It seemed off to me, but I brushed it off. I picked, and his voice was calm and too professional. "David, the deal has gone through smoothly. Congratulations." I frowned. "What deal?" "Why, the property transfer, of course. Michael sold them yesterday evening. Quick transaction, too. All your assets, land, the estate, even the house you're in." The boy worked fast. I remember dropping the phone. My hands went cold. The walls around me seemed to shrink. I couldn't breathe. It was as if the ground opened beneath me and swallowed me whole. Sold? My son had sold everything. Not borrowed. Not pledged. Sold. I sat there in silence, the weight of betrayal pressing on my chest until it felt like my heart would burst. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. Even the chair beneath me felt stolen. And in that moment, for the first time in my life, I felt utterly, completely defeated. I didn't even knock when I got to Michael's house. My fists hammered against his polished mahogany door until it swung open. He stood there in casual clothes, as if nothing had happened. A smug grin stretched across his face. "Dad," he said lightly, "you should have called first. Don't you dare dad me." My voice trembled, not with age, but with rage. "What did you do, Michael?" He arched an eyebrow, pretending innocence. "What do you mean?" "You know exactly what I mean." I shoved the papers I had grabbed from my lawyer into his chest. "The land, the house, my life's work. You sold it all. How could you?" Michael glanced at the documents, then tossed them carelessly onto his side table. "I didn't sell your life's work, Dad. I sold my inheritance. That's all it ever was." The room spun around me. My legs threatened to give out, but my fury kept me upright. "Inheritance? I'm still alive. You betrayed me. Your own father. What haven't I done for you? The life you live now, I made it possible. Your house, I made that possible. So why this, Michael?" He smirked, stepping closer, lowering his voice. That's your problem. You never understood. I'm not here for you. I'm here for me. I've taken what is rightfully mine. Rightfully yours? My voice cracked. What will your siblings think? What will they? He cut me off with words that sliced deeper than any knife. If only you had died with Mom, none of this would have happened. But since you decided to stay alive, I had no choice but to take it by force. My body froze. My ears rang. He looked me in the eye, calm, merciless. I knew you wouldn't read the document. You never read anything I gave you. I told you it was temporary, and you believed me. But you signed away the right to sell, giving me full autonomy. Every bit of it was legal. You did this to yourself. Rage boiled inside me. My hand trembled, balled into a fist, ready to strike him across the face. But when I tried, nothing. My body betrayed me. My hands failed me. He chuckled, almost pitying. See? You can't even fight me. You're finished, old man. The sound of footsteps behind me made me turn. My other children had arrived. Word had spread quickly. I thought, foolishly, maybe they had come to defend me, to stand by me. Instead, they came with venom. Of course, my daughter sneered. You gave everything to Michael. You always loved him more. My second son spat on the floor. You never considered us your children. Now look, because of your foolishness, we get nothing. Tears stung my eyes. Children, please, don't children us, my daughter snapped. You signed it away. You mean to tell us we get nothing? After all these years? You were so blinded by Michael that you ruined us too. The rage broke out of me then. Enough. Get out. Get out of my house, all of you. Michael's laughter cut through the tension like a blade. He leaned back against his wall, arms folded. Which house, Dad? He asked mockingly. This isn't your house anymore. You signed it over to me. Better use the little money you have left to get yourself a new place. Their footsteps echoed as they left, slamming the door behind them. I stood in the silence, surrounded by walls that no longer belonged to me. For the first time, I realized I had nothing. Not a home, not respect, not even the love of my children. Only betrayal, and the bitter taste of rage I could not yet swallow. The week after Michael gutted me, I lived in a haze. The house felt haunted, not by ghosts, but by the weight of absence. Eva's voice echoed in the walls whenever I walked past her old sewing room. I could almost hear her laughter from the kitchen. For 40 years, this place had been the anchor of our family. Now, I knew it was nothing more than an empty shell, already tagged with someone else's name. Each night, I sat in my study with the lights dimmed, staring at the whiskey glass in my hand. Not drinking, just staring, as if the amber liquid might whisper answers. But there were none. Instead, there was the face of Michael, smirking, his words replayed over and over. If only you had died with Mom. I would wake up in cold sweats, fists clenched, heart pounding, rage boiling inside me, but it had nowhere to go. The shame outside was worse. The neighbors had heard. People I had known for decades, men I once stood shoulder to shoulder with in business, women who once envied Eva's grace. Now, they all looked at me with that same damn expression. Not words, just a face that screamed, "You fool. You pathetic old man. I pity you, but I also believe you deserved it." One evening, I walked past the local bar. The laughter inside grew louder when they noticed me. One of the younger men, drunk and careless, muttered just loud enough. Imagine raising a son for 60 years just for him to rob you blind. Couldn't be me. They all laughed. I kept walking, my spine stiff, but inside I was breaking. Worse still, my other children had vanished. Not a call, not a visit, nothing. As though I had ceased to be their father the moment I lost the house. In their eyes, my authority had ended with my signature. I was alone, completely and utterly alone. And then came the strangers. I returned one afternoon to see 3 men and a woman walking the compound with measuring tapes and cameras. They didn't look at me as the owner. No, to them, I was just an old man lingering in someone else's house. One of them, a realtor, spoke with professional courtesy but cold detachment. "Sir, the property has already been listed. You'll need to vacate within the week." Vacate, like I was a tenant, like I had never poured a lifetime into building these walls. I waited until they left, then locked myself in my room. I sat on the edge of the bed Eva and I once shared, my hands shaking, my chest heaving. I thought of her again. Eva, with her gentle eyes, holding Michael as a baby. She adored him so fiercely. She would sing to him, call him her golden boy. David, she once told me, Michael will carry your name forward. He'll do things you never could. I let her believe that. I believed it too. And now, the boy she had adored, the boy I had sacrificed for, was the one who had stripped me of everything. What would you think of me now, Eva? I whispered into the silence. Would you blame me? Would you say I failed you? That I failed him? The room offered no answer, only the sound of my own ragged breathing. But beneath the shame, beneath the grief, something hardened. I remembered the faces, the smug pity, the silent mockery, Michael's laughter, the neighbors' whispers, my children's accusations. And I swore to myself, if it was the last thing I did, I would not let this be my end. I will get all of it back, I whispered to the dark. Every brick, every acre, every shred of my name. I will not go out defeated, not by strangers, not by fate, and certainly not by my own son. The words tasted like fire on my tongue. That night, for the first time in days, I slept soundly, not because the pain had gone, but because vengeance had given me purpose. I don't know what possessed me to drive to Michael's mansion that morning. Perhaps some foolish hope that there was still a shred of sun left inside the man. Perhaps the bitter need to look him in the eyes again, to see if he carried even an ounce of shame. I stood outside his gate for 15 minutes, knocking, ringing, calling. No answer. I could hear voices inside, laughter, music, glasses clinking. But not for me. Not anymore. I turned back, humiliated, the gravel crunching under my shoes like mockery. That was when I made my way, one last time, to my lawyer's office. He looked up when I entered, already weary of me. We had been here before. Me begging, him shaking his head, telling me it would be a hard case to prove. Fraud required intent, duress, trickery. Michael's contract had all the right words, all the right signatures. My signature. I sat heavily in the chair across from him, leaning forward like a drowning man grasping for air. File it, I said. He frowned. David. File the damn case. I cut him off, my voice raw. Fraud, duress, deception. Call it whatever you want. Even if you think we can't win, file it. Put in black and white that my son defrauded me and made me homeless. He adjusted his glasses, studying me. Even if I take this on, Michael's lawyers will tear you apart. They'll say you signed willingly, that you knew exactly what you were doing. Let them, I thundered. My hand slammed against his desk. Let the whole world hear it. Let them read it in the papers. Let them see who he really is, a son who gutted his father alive for wealth. I don't care if I lose every coin I have left. Just file it. Silence stretched between us. My heart pounded like a war drum. Finally, he sighed. All right, I'll draft the complaint. I leaned back, breathing hard, my chest aching with something new. Not peace, not relief, but momentum. 3 days later, Michael was served. I heard about it before he called me. His voice on the phone was venomous, full of mock laughter. So this is your game, old man? He sneered. Dragging me to court? You think anyone will believe you? You think you'll win? I didn't rise to his bait. I only said 6 words before ending the call. I don't need to win, Michael. The silence on the line before it clicked dead told me he heard what I meant. I didn't need victory yet. I only needed the world to watch. I learned quickly that revenge in a courtroom wasn't about truth. It was about strategy. Truth was just a tool like a blade. The question was whether you knew where to cut. Michael thought this case was a joke. He strutted into hearings with the arrogance of a man untouchable. His lawyers were sharks in polished suits, smirking across the aisle at me, as though I were prey already bleeding in the water. But I wasn't prey. Not anymore. I listened more than I spoke. I let my lawyer carry the words, and I sat quiet, frail, the picture of a father wronged. I could see Michael sneer at my silence, mistaking it for weakness. Meanwhile, we dug. Fraudulent property transfers. Hidden clauses buried in paperwork. Shell companies tied to offshore accounts. Deals made in bad faith where Michael had leveraged other people's assets under promises he never intended to keep. My son was clever, but his greed had made him sloppy. Every discovery was another stone in the sling I was building. The problem was proving intent. Without someone to point the finger, it would remain my word against his, and his lawyers would bury me under procedure and technicalities. And then, by sheer providence or fate, a break came. A man named Robert Klein walked into my lawyer's office one afternoon. He was a former business associate of Michael's, though associate was a generous word. His face was tired, his voice edged with bitterness. He did the same thing to me, Robert said flatly. Convinced me to sign a temporary transfer of my property to secure a deal. Promised me it would revert back and I would make 50% of the profits from the deal for my risk. By the time I realized, he'd sold it to one of his dummy corporations and stripped me clean. I didn't have the money to fight him. But if you're already in court, my lawyer and I exchanged a look. This was the missing piece. Another victim. Another story. Not just the father's word against the son. Now, there was a pattern. A history. Proof of predation. And the beauty of it was, Michael had no idea. I thanked Robert that day with tears in my eyes. But in truth, my mind was already moving ahead. This wasn't just about my land anymore. It was about dismantling Michael's empire, brick by brick, until he stood naked in the same shame he had forced upon me. So I kept quiet. We filed Robert's affidavit under seal, preparing to introduce it at the right moment, like a blade slipped between the ribs when least expected. Across the aisle, Michael still smirked, still carried himself like a king. He didn't know that his throne was already cracking beneath him, and I would be the one to watch it fall. Courtrooms have their own kind of silence. Heavy, expectant, suffocating. The kind that makes every shuffle of paper, every cough, every tapping shoe echo like thunder. Michael strutted into that silence like a peacock. Perfect suit, polished shoes, his entourage of lawyers flanking him like a royal guard. He winked at me as he passed my table. Ready to embarrass yourself again, old man? He muttered under his breath, just loud enough for me to hear. I said nothing. I only looked at him, calm, steady, almost pitying. That unsettled him more than any insult could. The proceedings began. His lawyers were sharp, clinical, dismantling my claim with legal jargon. They painted me as an old man confused by paperwork, a father lashing out because he couldn't accept that his son was smarter, sharper, more ambitious. For a moment, I could see the jury nodding. Michael was winning. He sat back in his chair, smug, eyes darting at me like he'd already claimed victory. And then my lawyer rose. Your Honor, before we proceed further, the plaintiff would like to introduce a new piece of evidence. Michael shifted. His lawyers whispered, frowning. This wasn't in the discovery exchange. Objection, Your Honor. The judge nodded. Denied. You may proceed. The doors opened, and Robert Klein walked in. The moment Michael saw him, the smirk fell from his face. Robert took the stand, his voice steady but edged with rage. He told his story in detail. How Michael had manipulated him into signing a temporary property transfer. How he'd woken up one morning to find everything gone. How Michael had hidden assets offshore through dummy corporations. The courtroom stirred. Whispers rippled through the benches. The jury leaned forward, hungry. My lawyer pressed the knife deeper. Mr. Klein, in your experience, was this done in good faith? Robert's voice was iron. No. It was fraud. Plain and simple. A calculated betrayal. I watched Michael's jaw tighten. He leaned forward, whispering furiously to his lawyers, his mask of control cracking for the first time. And then, my lawyer delivered the finishing stroke. Your Honor, the plaintiff submits this testimony, along with supporting financial records, as evidence of a pattern of fraudulent property transfers and bad faith dealings by the defendant, Michael Monroe. The judge's gavel struck the desk sharply. Admitted. Michael's face drained of color. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't prepared for another victim. He thought this was only about a father too sentimental to protect himself. Now the courtroom saw him for what he was, not a shrewd businessman, but a predator. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something close to peace. Not victory yet, but the tide had turned. I sat back in my chair, hands folded, and allowed myself the faintest smile. Michael caught it. And in his eyes, for just a flicker of a moment, I saw something I hadn't seen before. Fear. They tried to settle behind closed doors, but I declined their offers. Tell Michael he'd suffer for what he made me go through. The weeks after Robert's testimony were chaos. Chaos for Michael, not for me. I watched it unfold from a distance, almost clinically. His empire was a house of cards, and all it needed was one solid gust. Robert's words had been that gust. Suddenly, clients who once lined up at Michael's door began backing away. No one wanted to be associated with a man accused of fraud, forced signatures, offshore laundering, and bad faith contracts. Banks froze his accounts. Investors pulled out. His allies avoided his calls. And the press devoured him. Son accused of defrauding his own father. Monroe legacy in courtroom scandal. Greed or madness? How a son sold his father's home. Every headline was another nail in his coffin. Michael raged, of course. He stormed through hearings, his once perfect composure unraveling. He shouted at his lawyers, slammed fists on tables, tried to spin the narrative that I was a bitter old man ruining his career out of spite. But the more he fought, the more pathetic he looked. The image of the golden son, the genius businessman, crumbled. All that remained was the truth. A predator who fed even on his own blood. And me? For the first time since signing that cursed paper, I stood taller. Not because I was wealthy again, money was still scarce, and I had to live modestly, but because I had my dignity back. One morning, I stood outside what used to be my home, watching strangers move in. The pain should have cut me, but instead I smiled. That house wasn't my legacy anymore. Eva was my legacy. The love we built, the name we carried. Michael had tried to soil that name, but I would not let him have the last word. So, I founded something new. With the little settlement I recovered and the help of a few loyal friends, I started a foundation in Eva's honor, the Monroe Trust for Honest Dealings. It wasn't grand at first, just a small office, a handful of volunteers. But it was real, it was clean, and it was mine. Every letterhead bore her name. Every meeting echoed her spirit. Michael's fall was total. Disgraced, bankrupt, and shunned, he disappeared from the headlines as quickly as he had once dominated them. No allies, no empire, only the wreckage of his greed. Sometimes I imagined Eva standing beside me, her hand on my shoulder, her eyes on the plaque with her name engraved. And I knew this was the victory she would have wanted. I had not just avenged myself. I had reclaimed our family's honor. And Michael? He was nothing more than a cautionary tale. I didn't need him in chains. I didn't need him begging forgiveness. His silence, his absence, was victory enough. Because in the end, the world remembered me not as the fool who signed away his life, but as the father who refused to die quietly. I was David Monroe, and I got it all back without lifting a hand. If you enjoyed this video, like, and I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section, and don't forget to subscribe for more. Thank you for watching.